Hi, I'm Lotus, and I love indie games. Indie games like Dredge, the eldritch horror fishing game and debut release from New Zealand-based developer Black Salt Games. Dredge is wonderfully low-poly in its overworld, reminiscent of wooden toys and kinetic sandboxes, which they only double down on in the map screen. The art overall is pretty drab, to say the least, but the rare juxtaposition of bright, vibrant colors drives home the fact that this world isn't dead or boring, but that it's merely humans and their constructions that have been worn down by the waves. You'll be spending nearly all of your time in the game out on those waves, so it's a good show they put so much effort into making sure they're beautiful in both sight and sound. It's easy to lose time staring at the glittering water at sunset or trying to decipher the shapes beneath the surface during the day. The ambience of the wind and waves and surf and seabirds is excellently produced, and someone over at Black Salt must know it, considering they beat me to making ASMR soundscapes of the game's different locations. The only area where Dredge really lets me down aesthetically speaking is in its overworld sea monsters. The team does an excellent job taking real-life fish and translating them into the game's art style, and they really flex their sixth sense of imagination with the mutant aberrations. What few true eldritch beings appear should be standouts of design and serve as icons within the game itself, but they don't. They're actually kind of boring. But I digress. The real star of Dredge is, of course, the fishing itself, accomplished by casting your line and completing one of a handful of short, timing-based mini-games. Following that, some inventory management is required where you'll be nestling irregular critters into the limited slots of your ship. The game also has an interest in time management. It will repeatedly warn you not to stay out late at night and constantly remind you to sleep regularly. That aspect of the game at least rarely bears fruit, but it's not all that invasive either. In fact, the only thing that really mars the experience of Dredge is that its relaxing atmosphere does give way to tedium moving into the latter half of the game. I'll say right now that games don't need to be challenging for any player of any skill level, nor do they need to be packed to the gills with content. However, Dredge does construct some areas and missions intending to create challenge, but they require little more than a tolerance for boredom. You could argue that this marries perfectly with the concept of the game, of the sea as an unrelenting and all-encompassing force in the world, that the only way to survive is to endure its constant influence, and you'd be right to do so. That makes sense, narratively speaking. However, gameplay-wise, it's still not something I find particularly entertaining, or difficult, or fun. To that end, the mangrove-inspired Twisted Strand is a serious low point in Dredge's runtime, requiring the player to circuitously meander through a moving maze of mangrove roots with little to do other than sit and wait for the correct path to open. While this area is technically optional, it's indicative of that broader problem the game has, where it goes out of its way to attempt to create more traditionally engaging gameplay, but it outright fails to do so. You'll see it again in the mandatory story-relevant areas of the early Gale Cliffs, as well as the late Devil's Spine. Other than this, Dredge certainly seems focused on being a relatively light and breezy experience with only an undercurrent of horror. I think what urgency and challenge Dredge does succeed at instilling is most relevant to players who already have some amount of fear for the game's subject matter. And that also makes a lot of sense, considering deep water, sea creatures, and drowning are all really common and deep-seated fears, but they're not ones I share, so I rarely felt anything demanded of me. After testing the waters for the first few tutorial-laden nights, I quickly realized there was no substantial penalty for staying out late or even going multiple days without a full night's sleep. Those are really the only forms of abrasion the game presents outside of, crashing into things, so I wasn't left much to do but enjoy my time on the open ocean and fill out my catalog of sea creatures and their aberrations. And that is very enjoyable. When all the extraneous bits fall away and it's just about the sailing and the fishing and the weird world and the fauna, it's great. It's only when it complicates that original formula that it begins to stagnate, as it does with what feel like very sudden, if visually exciting endings. I think if Dredge focused more readily on combining its time and inventory management aspects, it'd be a real winner. Namely, I was surprised to find that moving items around in your inventory does not cause time to pass. Although, like I said, sailing around at night isn't as dangerous as I'd like it to be, this could still create a very organic point of interest within the game. Players will naturally improve at this specific skill, especially as they memorize the shapes and sizes of the various equipment and fauna. With that change, they could feel rewarded for their improvement, and time management as a core mechanic would be further reinforced. In general, I wanted to see more emphasis on the item sorting aspect of the game, as I thought it was really successful when it did crop up, as with the various shrines found around the map. All in all, Dredge is a very good game. It has a strong core of fishing up beautiful and creatively rendered monstrosities in a salt-soaked, if stock-standard, eldritch archipelago. Although it falters when it tries to expand on that idea, it's not enough to taint the overall experience.